welcome to Athena's Rapid Fire Takes on Ethics and Compliance Issues. Our guest today is Dr. Hemma Lomax, the Deputy General Counsel and Head of Global Business Integrity for DocuSign. Hemma is a leader in the E&C space, known for her thought leadership, deep experience, and her background, which includes coaching, mentoring, and podcasting. No pressure. So Hemma, welcome.
Thank you so much, Susan. I'm so happy to join you. Thanks for inviting me.
You know, we start with 3 statements, and you can say yes, no, or maybe. So let's jump in. Ideally, an ethics and compliance program should resemble Waze, not a fold-out static roadmap.
Resounding yes. No more static roadmaps, please. Just navigation and enablement.
I love it. Second, many risk analyses are based on data that's out of date and retro-looking.
Yes, again, traffic lights. We don't like those. Let's have something that gives you decision useful information as you go on your journey.
And 3, training completions are one of the best measurements of ethics and compliance program effectiveness.
No way. Definitely no. We've got to do better. We've got to make the training decision useful and effective and measure that instead.
I love your approach. So let's take our deep dive into what is the ideal ethics and compliance program that resembles Waze rather than a fold-out map?
Yes, thank you for asking this. I love to talk about this idea of seeing compliance in the wild and what's effective and how we can then leverage that in our programs. And so for me, what I'm trying to do is find ways to provide decision useful information that feels more like navigation than an old Rand McNally atlas or map. And sadly, despite our best intentions, we write these beautiful policies and we try to teach them once a year or so. That's just not how we drive on the roads. I don't look at my highway code ever after I've passed the test.
I don't know anybody that does.
Right? And I mean, although I'd like to tell the story of when I learned to drive in London, I would have this big atlas, it's called an A to Z in the UK, open a book open on my steering wheel to navigate through there. And it's a good analogy really, because it's pretty dangerous if you think about it from reflection.
Sure is.
If those of you that haven't been to London, it's not like New York or DC. It's not a grid with the A streets and the 1 streets. It's a crazy mess. Very similar to some of the ways we work, right? Business is not necessarily grids and straightforward. And the only people that could ever do it without a map were those black cab drivers.
Oh, they had to do the knowledge, didn't they? Yeah.
They did the knowledge test, but it took years, decades. And it was always astounding that they could find their way across London if you just gave them a street name. What we're doing in compliance today is we're asking our employees to do what the black cab drivers had to do without the training. And we know that today I don't need to use that atlas because I can put Waze or any, Google Maps, whatever it is, a navigation system on which provides me with decision useful information. And the interesting thing about Waze is I know where my daughter's school is, but I still put it on because it still provides me with relevant, real-time, decision useful information to help me get where I want to go safely, swiftly, and strategically. And so that vision of what Waze has created for me as a driver is what I'd like to create for the people we serve as compliance officers.
It makes total sense. And it's so much more of a dynamic, relevant model than just sort of a set of policies. Here, read these.
Yes.
So let's turn to risk analysis. So relying on a risk analysis that takes several months to put together might not be a good idea. Is that what the DOJ guidance on ethics and compliance programs means by avoiding snapshots? How do we do that?
Yes, let's go back to the Waze analogy. I mean, this snapshot of a map was out of date on the day it was printed if there was construction or a diversion, if you think about that, number one. And even the GPS systems of the day, remember you had to download those maps and it would take hours to update the maps?
Oh,
And
yeah.
you were lucky if it was up to date. If you were traveling to France for the weekend and you had your GPS, you had to get the right maps. So similar point with risk intelligence and risk assessment. These things tend to be done annually. If you're lucky, you do them more, but they're done annually or ad hoc. They take a while if you do questionnaires, surveys, interviews. And by the time you've probably printed it out and the ink is drying, it's probably out of date because, if you're lucky, you ask the questions, you ask the right questions to the right people, and you got relevant risk intelligence and risk data at that moment. But Is it decision useful? Is it helping anyone make any decisions? And are you using risk intelligence that was relevant a month ago or a year ago, but no longer relevant today? So, Waze comes back into play. If you think about Waze, those of you, your listeners that use it will probably remember that it doesn't just give decision useful information, it crowdsources risk intelligence. So, Susan, I'm on
Yes.
my route to my children's school. Let's use that again. And I see an obstacle in the road. I see a hazard. I see, maybe a speed camera that I'm interested in. I can very easily, they make it easy and safe, notify Google. Google's the mechanism behind Waze. And they will take that data for millions of drivers every second of every day. And so they crowdsource the risk intelligence in real time on those journeys. And then they use their algorithms, their beautiful AI in the background, and spit it back out to you, Susan, who's 5 feet behind me. So you now benefit from what I've seen with my eyes. Again, what a beautiful analogy for compliance. We want to do risk assessment, but we really would, in my vision, like to do it daily. I don't really want to know about your journey, Susan. I want to know about my journey. And that's the same with our employees. Why give them generic information when actually they need to know about their own specific route? And again, that information may not be relevant for days, minutes, but it's there now and we know. And I'll go one step further. I love this analogy. I go quite far. Imagine you've told me that you've had, there's been an accident at this specific intersection. Well, Google now has the ability to track the historical instance at that intersection. They will
Oh my
know.
goodness.
They will
Wow.
know that that's a dangerous intersection. They can warn you, and they do, that you're now approaching a historically dangerous intersection. But let's go one step further. They can also do the root cause and say, well, hold on, let's contact the local authority and let them know that that's a dangerous intersection. And maybe it's a bush over a stop sign, who knows, right? But you can actually use the intelligence to do what we all want to do, which is get to the root cause of the problem and get people moving faster without having to think about these things. So again, risk intelligence should not be a static map. It should not be something you get in one time. And again, how lucky we are to be alive right now, Susan. I love to quote Hamilton. This is not just vision anymore. This is, or idea. We have the technology now that can help us get closer to this. So very exciting.
That's such a great analogy with Waze. And you raise a question in my mind about training because, as you know, Athena's doing a lot with AI. And if you think about it, why should people working in a very low corruption risk country have the same training on corruption as people who are right at the front lines in a high risk country? And I see that as the future of training. But I'd love your take on it.
No, you're absolutely right. And back to this point of helping people get where they want to go swiftly, safely, strategically. The they is important. I don't want to know everyone's journey. I want to know my journey, whether I'm a salesperson versus an engineer versus someone out in the field, someone customer facing that's not, someone that deals with government officials. We can't give everyone the same blanket training for every journey they might possibly have in a corporation. And some of us are doing well. We're doing functional training, we're doing industry-based training, but many of us are not. We're just taking the off-the-shelf training and checking a box that we provided anti-corruption training, code of conduct training. And so I love, I'm a long-time customer of Athena, as you know, three-time customer, and I love what you do because you're giving us these small bites, these nudges that we can shift around like a puzzle and get the right, maybe not there yet, but certainly more relevant training to the relevant people. I think that's really helpful. And that's what we need. I will also venture, Susan, that training might not be training in the future. We might have to disrupt the whole model. I don't want to call it training. I want to call it navigation and
Ah,
enablement. Because again, let's just go back to my driving analogy. I don't get driving training. It's one of the most dangerous things I probably do, but I don't get driving training. I don't take annual training, but I do learn from the tech. And I'll give you a specific example of that, just moving away from Waze. Um, there's an idea that behavior can be influenced, and there's this gentleman called Professor BJ Fogg at Stanford University, and he says behavior happens when motivation, ability, and prompt coincide.
hmm.
So my insurance company would probably like me to be a safer driver to bring the premiums down and all that. And so I can sign up to track my driving. And they track three things. They track my braking speed, my acceleration speed, and the time of day I drive. They could track many things, but they chose the top three things. And they do that with my phone, so it's very easy. As long as I've got my phone with me, they can track those things. And they motivate me because they give me a whopping great discount if my driving's good, 30%.
Wow. 30%. Yikes, I'm
The
signing up.
massive discount, right, and then the other motivation, which is maybe even stronger, is they pitched me against my husband, so I know who's a better driver on any one day.
Oh
So I've
no,
got
so you can win that argument with data?
there we
Fantastic.
are. So exactly. So daily data. So motivation's there, the ability's there, it's my phone. And the prompt is there. I have to, remember to have the phone on and have the system turned on. What it did though, not only did it give them decision useful information about my premiums, it gave them decision useful information about the risk of me as a driver. And again, think of that scale. They're getting information about how we're driving in certain roads and certain times. But it also influenced my behavior. For the first time in 30, 40 years of driving, I started to think about my braking speed and my acceleration speed. And I'll bet you, Susan, I was a better driver because of it. Not just because of the money and the competition, but because I was just aware of it. So I consider that as training. Right? That's a very effective way to train Hemma to think about braking speed, how fast I brake and how fast I accelerate. And I don't consider myself a dangerous driver or someone that doesn't care about being a dangerous driver. I just didn't think about it. So many of our people we serve are right-minded, well-intentioned people that aren't thinking about it. But the annual training isn't going to get us there. Something else, using the technology on my specific journey, motivating me, making it easy for me to do, and maybe just prompting me, nudging me. That science works in practice. And I can tell you, my braking speed and my acceleration speed is much better than it was before I had that training.
And you won the argument with your husband,
And
presumably.
I kept on top. I had my little award and little points to show him that I'm a better driver. But either way, I'm sure it motivated him too. And that's the point, isn't it? We've got lots of tools at our disposal, but we often default to the basic annual training. And you asked the question, why? Why would we do that? We know we're doing it because we're making our lives easier. Not to be irreverent, we're making our lives easier. And it seems like we have to race to the bottom to do more. Scale meant do less
Ah,
and do more, but scale is a different game now with the technology that's available to us. Now we can do a lot more with technology, so we don't have to stick to the defaults of annual training, one size fits all, or even just marginal tweaks where we give a couple of different things, different functions and call it different. So I think, again, the opportunities abound. I'm excited and I encourage all of our listeners, all of your listeners to look for inspiration in the wild because it's out there.
well, one size fits all is so yesterday. What can I say? And we were just talking about using our policy tool, which can create training in less than 10 minutes in the wake of investigations, where you can customize using a sanitized example and you zero in, and people, it's still fresh in their minds. And they probably want to know exactly what the navigation is to avoid that happening or to fix it while they get their car repaired, to carry the analogy. So, Hemma, what a dynamic model. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I hope you'll come back.
Thank you for having me. So much fun.